Let's look at everybody's favorite resource in the Dynasty fantasy landscape out there, Keep Trade Cut. All right. And I think for as much as we love, or rather, maybe don't or hate it at times, it's a good gauge. It's good reference, right? It's good context. Just a peek into a community at large, or how it's supposed to be and designed to work, how exactly it truly values some players at times, and how much that maybe aligns or deviates from our own individual personal valuations. That's another story. But nonetheless, we'll do a little bit of a market monitor Sunday. I guess Monday is the more apt analogy, alliteration for that. But screw it. It's Sunday. Let's just look at Keep Trade Cut, kind of assess the top 50, so to speak, and give you a peek into my mind, as much a dangerous place as that is for fantasy and dynasty context. We've got a Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, CJ Stroud at the top, which I understand. I think that's more than fair. And keeping in mind, I guess it's just with Keep Your Cut, we know we got that super flex 12 team, it's a half PPR, super flex half PPR. So, got the three quarterbacks. Then we see the receivers here, which I'll be honest, I just don't understand. I don't understand how you, in your right mind, you're going to say, give me these receivers over a Lamar Jackson, over a Jalen Hurts. I just don't understand that. In fantasy, in a super flex format, you have game breaking type quarterbacks in terms of their dynamic. Obviously, we know what they can do as a rusher, but as a passer still, and the weapons that they have at their disposal, and just the transcendent type of talents that they can be in this fantasy game. Come on. And with this tier, so to speak, of receivers, it just more speaks to the relative devaluation in a sense of, okay, why just start this run on this tier now when we still have this value at quarterback? And so then it becomes, your Jefferson, Chase, Lambs for me after the five quarterbacks, so to speak. And then we see, a Joe Burrow, Amon-Ra. And again, look at my latest video, not to spoil, but Amon-Ra, he's in that tier, right? That tier one receiver. So nonetheless, I get personal preference when you're drafting, especially in a startup, right? And you have your first round pick and you want to be really measured in how you approach it. I'm just always going to prioritize, at least with these top five quarterbacks. Then it becomes a game of the receivers, right? And then you've got, in my money, for my book, completely just butchered that, but you've got Joe Burrow, you've got Justin Herbert. Okay, then they really round out the first round, right? It's the top 12, so to speak. Although Marvin Harrison, you see him here, he puts in a very strong case, right? Going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. I get him here at the back of the first. As I do Caleb Williams, right? Caleb Williams, if anything, for me, he's got to be over Marv. He just has to be over Marvin Harrison. I don't know if it's a likability factor, right? And obviously, this channel, Dynasty Psych, we try to take a little bit of a different look, right? Not so heavily data analytically based analysis, right? And so you think about the intangible. As much as people maybe like to ignore it or not admit it or address it, the intangible perception is reality, especially at this time of the year, before there's any football, when there's not any football being played, right? And we can, of course, look at maybe what happened most recently and in our mind paint visuals, paint a picture of, okay, well, that just happened. That's what we have most recently to go off of. But why should we allow that, especially for college players, to dictate expectations of, oh, well, this just means college to then this in the NFL in terms of, oh, well, Caleb Williams was disappointing by his standards with USC. It's not as simple as just one player. I think that it's a team sport, right? And I just don't understand why we have Caleb Williams here outside of the top 12 when, behind a Marvin Harrison, behind a Bijan. I love Bijan, right? I love Bijan. Don't get me wrong. But I just don't understand that. And then we've got AR. I think AR, that's kind of a fair value for AR. We know what type of a game breaker talent he can be. freak athlete. We use the term freak. I know it can be overutilized, right? Freak, generational. Those are kind of the most tossed around verbiage in this dynasty space. But then you've got another RB here, Brees Hall, Puka. I think Puka, that's fine for Puka. Right there, I think right in the same tier as a Marv for me. So this is relatively decent value, I think, for Puka here. He's got the 5th round, that day 3 pick stigma, but what more do you want? You can't ask for more than what he just did in year 1. So then we go, okay, 2024 early first. At this point, these are like random placeholders. I don't even understand why they have them at this point. I mean, you can just toss them away because you have the actual rookies in here, so we'll just ignore that. Then you have Jordan Love here, effectively a mid-second round pick. Look, for me, I'm fine putting him right in and around, with Caleb Williams at the end of the end of the first round, beginning of the second, at a 1-2 turn type player. I really believe in Jordan Love. I think he's got an awesome situation. We saw what that ascending Packers, that young team did to end the year. It's just love, love, love Jordan Love. Okay? And maybe it is me being a little bit recency biased in a sense. But you look at the body of work in his true first full year starting and how you end on such high notes in very meaningful football, right? Especially in the playoffs. I mean, come on. And you got Gibbs, which I understand that's fair. Garrett Wilson. And you see, we'll look at the, monitor the actual positional valuations, wide receiver 7, right? I think that's okay. That's fair that's fine for Garrett Wilson. Big things with Aaron Rodgers. I've said, I don't really think Mike Williams plays any, or should play at least any, big part in terms of the valuation of Garrett Wilson and how high or not so high you are on his future. And then you got Sam Laporta here, which, look, we'll assume for our tight end premium in some sense or form, that is the standard, right? That is the standard. With Sam Laporta, I get it. All right, I get it. He's a monster. It's just crazy in a way when you just think about the tight end landscape, how Kyle Pitts, he would have been the guy you thought, easily a second round type startup pick, but it's Sam Laporta for good reason. Back end second round pick, I think it's fine. The youth and the production, I mean, what more do you want? You can't ask for much more. Just incredible, incredible receiving seasons from the top rookies from the 2023 class, which, funny enough, weren't the guys that you would have maybe envisioned, which is some interesting prospect discourse, right? We just talked about Puka. We're talking about Sam Laporta now. People would have heavily, heavily assumed, right? And this is just a good exercise, right? Thinking about where we stand right now and how things could very well play out. People love JSN. I love JSN, right? But you would have thought JSN would have had the Puka type year. You would have thought a Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer even would have had the type of Sam Laporta year. So it's just interesting monitoring expectations. I think that's where you have to be honest with yourself, right? You got to hold yourself in check and just not carry over, right? Talking about bias, not carry over preconceived biases with players. But Kyler, I think this is a very nice value here for Kyler. I think you want to lump him in and around, look, with Jordan Love in that tier. And in Superflex, look, if I can start with 2 QBs through the first 2 rounds, I am loving life, truly. And you got A.J. Brown here. End of the second round, a late second round pick, which I know the sentiment's not great. And I get, look, Saquon's going to have a tremendous role in that offense. There's a lot of good assets. Look, I think maybe it's my Eagles bias. Maybe I think, look, I can understand him going a little bit higher, but I think this is just where he falls behind relative to some other guys, and he's not so much a spring chicken anymore in a sense that, he's going to be in around age 27, right? So not as dynasty, cornerstone asset type of player anymore, which I understand, okay? And we get the CMC here, RB4. We know what he's capable of. It's going to be his age 28 season. I think this is okay value for CMC. Okay value. I get it. He's a game breaker. He's a difference maker at the position. And especially, look, if you want to go contender, and we're assuming like it's the third round reversal, right? If you want to be a true contender, I get with CMC, especially on that 301, we'll say the early third on that when it comes back to you. If you crafted your team in a way that you got yourself in a Monra on the back end, then you got a Garrett Wilson or Jordan Love, Kyler Murray type even, and then you swing around, you get a CMC for your contention strategy. I totally understand that. So Trevor Lawrence, though, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. I don't understand how he can be a top 12 QB. I don't get it. I don't get it. There's been links with Brandon Ayuk, the 17th overall pick. Seems like the Jaguars are, a little bit hesitant, and I understand that. It's a premium pick, but look, Ayuk is also a very good player. I think for me, it's just I don't want to keep betting. And look, you can call me out for a potential South Carolina bias, okay, if you want. I think this is me just being honest in the sense that, look, he's this good NFL quarterback, but in a fantasy sense, we just haven't seen anything even remotely close to nice, rushing upside. We we see a Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk receiver room. No Calvin Ridley now. You've got ETN there. I know they've done a decent job in addressing in free agency, trying to protect Trevor Lawrence. I just don't get. I feel like you talk about the psychology of players, the first impression, that 101, that generational prospect, right, with the Trevor Lawrence. I think it's that label that just kind of sticks with him. And look, he put up a top quarterback 8 type season a couple years ago. He put up with, he managed a lot of injuries and, not going to doubt the toughness at all. Really, really good player, really good leader, right? Managed a QB, 13 type season. I'm just not in love with a QB 12 in dynasty valuation. I'm just not. I think you look at, especially right below him, Drake London. Don't really like Drake London over Malik Neighbors in particular, but I would be all over Malik Neighbors over a Trevor Lawrence, for example. Especially, look, if I'm a contender, give me a Tyreek Hill. I'm taking Jane Daniels. I'm taking Jane Daniels over a Trevor Lawrence. I am. Talk about fantasy. We're playing a fantasy game after all. Jane Daniels is going to get that significant type of draft capital investment, and it's just more of a value floor in my book. A value floor in the sense that he can make an impression. Look, there's risk involved. I'll address that. There's risk involved, of course. But he makes an impression. And then we're talking to Jane Daniels, a much easier path for him to be in the shoes where an AR is right now, right? In terms of that value of that quarterback, potentially the 1-2 turn, even a year from now in 2025. So I just want that upside play over a Trevor Lawrence, to be quite frank. You see, we got the Chris Olave here. A little bit too rich, I think, a little bit too rich maybe for Chris Olave when I have some options like a Tyreek Hill. Although, maybe not. Maybe not. I'll be honest. No, I don't. I think once you get out, maybe this is just my off the cuff look. I like once you go through the top 25, especially, and then it becomes very much startup. It becomes very much strategy, roster, team construction, contention, rebuild type of a game, right? So we move forward. Yeah, the receivers, I get it. Okay, I get the receivers, how they're ranked here. Brock Purdy, I think he's earned it. Okay, he's earned it. I'm not the biggest fan, but he's absolutely in an incredible situation, and he doesn't have to be an absolute game breaker. He just has to get the ball to the guys. And he, of course, look, you want to call him a manager, whatever it might be, there's going to be some stats, okay? There's going to be some nice stats and some nice fantasy floor. And potentially, year to year, maybe some ceiling. But then you got 25 first. I mean, how can you predict that's how 25 first is going to be early, truly? This is where, your context is key, right? Your context is key within your league. How do you assess who, and especially if it's a startup, or you don't know everybody so well, if it's only through year one, how can you really bet on and assume, right? So, you know what you say, you know what happens when you assume. So that's just kind of my 2 cents in a way there with having an early 25 first just kind of thrown in here. I mean, in a vacuum, right? It makes sense, but how can you know, right? You just don't know. Have any remote close unless it's a league you've been in for a considerable amount of time, and you know certain players are not so great at Dynasty. Then I get it, but move past here. Dak, I think Dak. This is fair, very fair, and especially if you're looking for that QB2 as a contender, really like a Dak in this type of early third, or I guess late, kind of late third, mid late third round pick. I think that's nice value for sure. And you got Ayuk there, wide receiver 14. Look, I'm taking a shot on Roma Dunze. I'm taking a shot on Roma Dunze over a handful of guys. I mean, honestly, look, I just ranked him. He's basically in the same tier. He is in the same tier for me as Malik Neighbors, and so it's the three horsemen of this wide receiver class for me. And so then I put Roma Dunze at 37 here. He's a top 30 asset for me. He's a top 30 asset in Dynasty. He's going to get top 10 draft capital. He is a wide receiver one type for an NFL team and on a pretty upward trajectory, if I say so myself, as a wide receiver one in your dynasty teams. You see him here at wide receiver 15. I think, look, he doesn't have to move the sun and the earth in his rookie season to get into the top 10 in dynasty, the wide receiver landscape. Really not. Doesn't have to do, and that's how I recognized him. Little spoiler alert for my wide receiver rankings. But Drake May here, this is criminal here at 38. He's right there with the Jaden Daniels for me. Similarly, with you got your Roma Dunze, you got your Drake May. You're looking at, in theory, these kind of 104, 105, 106 type rookie picks. I just cannot get behind this. Drake May, it's like prospect fatigue. I feel like people are nitpicking. You got your Chris Sims putting him, his rankings. People react to him. Although he is a quarterback and he was right about CJ Stroud. He's been right about a couple of guys in the past. But for me, look, Drake May, I just really, really, really like his upside, the skill set he presents to be a difference maker on your fantasy teams. And especially if you have earned a 102, 103, and that's the only pick you have, I'm taking this shot. I'm taking this swing on quarterback. I just am. So I think this is so for a Drake May in particular. This is so low for me, even with Jaden Daniels. I think those QBs, they're not completely out of the stratosphere of a Caleb Williams, at least for an NFL draft capital investment and a fantasy relevant skill set. I know the Bears. Look, the Bears are such a nice situation, but we'll see. We will see. I think, nonetheless, for me, this is huge, huge value for these rookies with Drake May and Jane Daniels, especially at the quarterback position. Then you got Roma Dunze. You can check the logs. I've been making a point on Roma Dunze for a while. People are slowly catching up, slowly bargaining mentally about, okay, this is a legit prospect. But Tua here, Tua is a QB 17. I think I get it. Look, I get it. It's a great situation there in Miami for him, but how long does he really? It's a contract type year, so a little bit of a gamble there. A lot of risk, I think, with Tua, maybe more than we like to admit, but I get it. Nonetheless, a younger quarterback who very well, talk about the risk though, a lot to potentially be gained for him, potentially earning that type of franchise contract, but we'll see. We'll see. JT here, Michael Pittman, a pair of Colts. I get it. I think it's fine. I get it. Talking about, right, fourth round pick valuations, and really you're getting into with receivers here. These are very nice receiver twos in Dynasty for your team. And then you go mid-first. And so mid-first, look, you see it ahead of Nico Collins and Devontae Smith. By true definition of a mid-first, you're talking the 105, 106, 107, and 108, right? So for me, where is Brock Bowers? Where is J.J. McCarthy, right? I think they're getting a little bit disrespected. And with Brock Bowers, love me some Brock Bowers. I've been a huge fan on this channel. And J.J. McCarthy, I've been trying to tell you to brace for impact with J.J. McCarthy and just to take whatever preconceived notion of what Michigan looked like and assuming that's going to be whatever NFL team looks like that he plays for and steps in as their franchise quarterback with potential top 5 draft capital. I mean, come on. Come on. I try to be as bias free and honest as truly possible. And so that'll always be my philosophy here, trying to provide insight and perspective to you all. But let me know what you guys think of McCarthy and of Brock Bowers even. I think maybe there's a lot of reticence, but I just don't think it's fair. I think you gotta play upside bets. It's a dynasty game. But nonetheless, Nico, Devontae, DJ Moore, huge run on receivers here. And then you got your Devon A. Chain, you've got your Colin Williams, you got Trey McBride, then T. Higgins here as player 50, so to speak, which, look, I think that's fair. I think it's fine. He's basically hanging on as potential wide receiver 2 in Dynasty, could move to the potential Patriots to the Cardinals, possibly. Likelihood, by odds, seems like maybe Cincy he stays, but I just don't see why. Or I can see why from their sense, but I just have a feeling that they trade him. That's just kind of where I am and what I kind of feel on this day in March. But look, a lot can change, right? That is the only certainty in Dynasty, right? Change is what is guaranteed. Nothing else beyond that. So just want to bring up here as we move past, or not move, we're drawing the line here at the top 50. So with A-Chain, Dell, Kyron Williams, and in particular, I think Saquon has to really figure. He has to figure right in this conversation. So for me, he is right in this range of a top 50 player. I would put him ahead of T. Higgins. I really would. I think he is a player who's worthy of a late fourth round pick in startups. He's a year younger than McCaffrey. This is even if he's 85% of McCaffrey. That's a difference maker type of 20 points per game in PPR format. So that's kind of my big miss the cut, so to speak, in terms of assessing these keep trade cut rankings. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know in the comments. If you hated it, let me know in the comments. Just trying to provide some feedback from my point of view, just a good thought exercise, some insights, some assessments of, well, what does the greater dynasty landscape from the community look like? How can we navigate that now and in the future as best as we possibly can? Have a great weekend. I will see you guys in the next one.